The subjugation of women is a specific historical product of private property and class society. This social arrangement exists independently of biology or an immutable human nature. It is a material condition with a definitive point of origin. The monogamous family emerged as an economic mechanism to concentrate wealth in the hands of individual men. To ensure the transmission of this wealth to direct heirs, society required absolute certainty of paternity. This necessitated a form of monogamy imposed strictly upon the woman, while the man retained sexual freedom as a matter of practice and law. This transition marked the world historic defeat of the female sex. Within the new domestic order, the man took command of the home. The woman was degraded, reduced to servitude, and transformed into a mere instrument for the production of legitimate children. The family in class society is not a moral institution, but a cellular form of property transmission. The oppression of women stands as the oldest form of class oppression, containing the essential antagonisms that permeate the entire social structure of private ownership. Before the rise of private property, human society functioned through the matrilineal gens. Descent followed the female line exclusively. In this communal social order, the household was a public institution rather than a restricted private unit. The division of labor between the sexes was not a division of rank. The management of the household, the preparation of food, and the care of children was recognized as a socially necessary industry. Within the communal household, women held total authority, as their work was public and essential to the survival of the group. This egalitarian structure was destroyed by the intensification of agriculture and the domestication of animals. These developments produced a surplus of wealth, livestock, metal tools, and slaves that accumulated in the hands of the men who controlled the new sources of subsistence. A crisis of inheritance followed this accumulation. Under mother right, children belonged to the mother's gens and could not inherit from their father. To solve this, mother right was overthrown. Descent was decreed to follow the male line, ensuring that accumulated wealth remained with the father's direct offspring. Material conditions, not a change in ideas, permanently dismantled women's social equality. Male supremacy became an economic necessity for the preservation of private property, instituting a new social order based on the subordination of the female sex. The classical Athenian family serves as the definitive model for this oppression. The wife was confined to the women's quarters, restricted to domestic tasks like spinning and weaving. She was an oikorema, a thing for looking after the house, whose only social value was the production of legitimate heirs. While the law demanded absolute fidelity from the wife, the state actively favored the institution of prostitution for the husband. A woman had to be a prostitute, a hetaira, to participate in intellectual or artistic life. This duality confirms that the monogamous family was never based on mutual love, but on economic control. Within this cellular unit of class society, the husband occupies the position of the bourgeois, and the wife represents the proletariat. The first-class opposition in history coincides with the antagonism between man and woman in monogamous marriage. Monogamy and prostitution are historical complements. The dark shadow of monogamy, prostitution and adultery, became as much a social institution as marriage itself. The degree of women's emancipation remains the natural measure of general emancipation within any given society. Capitalism transformed the family into a legal property contract. In the bourgeois family, marriage is a transaction that disposes of the wife as an instrument of production. On paper, the contract is free. In reality, it is a sale of the woman into domestic slavery, enforced by the laws of inheritance. This bourgeois order maintains a system of wives in common through the institution of commercial prostitution. Commodity production turns female sexuality into a market asset, ensuring that the community of women already exists as a byproduct of private property. The proletarian reality is fundamentally different. Large-scale industry drew the working-class woman out of the home and onto the factory floor. By engaging in wage labor, the woman became an active participant in social production, often becoming the primary breadwinner for her family. In the propertyless class, there is no wealth to bequeath and no property to protect. The economic foundation for male supremacy in the proletarian household has vanished. While the brutality inherited from millennia of monogamy may persist, its institutional basis is destroyed. The breakdown of male economic authority within the proletarian household reveals that women's subordination relies entirely on property relations. This subordination is a historical condition that collapses the moment the material requirement for male-dominated inheritance is removed. Legal equality under capitalism cannot achieve emancipation. Rights to vote, to own property, or to enter a marriage freely leave the underlying economic compulsion untouched. The law is satisfied with formal consent, but it ignores the material forces that drive that consent. As long as a woman is confined to isolated, unpaid domestic labor, she remains a domestic servant. This labor is performed outside the sphere of social production, ensuring that her subordination remains a material fact regardless of her legal status. The liberation of women requires their entry into public industry on a mass scale. Only by participating in social production can women break the isolation of the private household. This requires the abolition of the family as the economic unit of society. The individual household must cease to be a private enterprise of domestic labor and child-rearing. Socialism replaces private housekeeping with public industry. The care of children, the preparation of food, and the maintenance of the home shift from the isolated domestic sphere into the social sphere, where society assumes responsibility for every child alike. Emancipation requires destroying the economic anxiety that poisons personal relations. When the means of production becomes social property, the necessity for prostitution and the economic compulsion of marriage disappear. Personal relations are finally freed from property relations. The working class struggle is distinct from bourgeois feminism. The latter seeks equality within the existing order, the right to be exploited on equal terms and to rise within corporate hierarchies. It does not challenge the property relations that produce subordination. Victories for the bourgeois woman often come at the expense of the working class woman, whose oppression is economic rather than legal. Equality within capitalism only reshuffles the terms of exploitation. It does not end it. The full equality of women is an integral component of the class struggle. It is not a demand to be deferred until after the revolution, but a requirement for the revolution itself. The socialization of domestic labor, equal pay, and the provision of public childcare are transitional demands. They lead directly to the overthrow of capital by removing the family as an economic tool of the bourgeoisie. The working class cannot build a new society on the foundation of the old family. It must transform both together. Emancipation is inseparable from the socialist revolution, for the class cannot emancipate itself without emancipating women.